Hey y'all, I want to introduce you to Starting Block, the best co-working space in Madison. If you work from home or you are new to Madison, or you just feel like you don't have a professional community, you should definitely check out Starting Block. Many of you may know Starting Block as Madison's startup hub, but it's a lot more than that. They're constantly hosting networking and professional events for the community, and their co-working membership rates are super competitive. So if you're tired of working from home or you want to build your professional community, check out Starting Block at startingblockmadison.org. And that's startingblockmadison.org. Today on CityCast Madison. A local volunteer-run nonprofit called Wisconsin Books to Prisoners has had their work effectively stopped by a state policy change. Housed in the Social Justice Center on Willie Street, the group has sent over 70,000 free books, majority used, to state prisons since 2006. But earlier this year, the Wisconsin Department of Corrections, the DOC, put a ban on used books, saying they're being used to smuggle in drugs into the prisons. And last month, that policy change blew up in the public eye. Last week, the group met with the Wisconsin Department of Corrections on the change, as it comes at a cost. We sat down with Wisconsin Books to Prisoners director and co-founder Cami Mathey to get the latest. It's Wednesday, November 13th. I'm Bianca Martin, and here's what Madison's talking about. Hi, Cami.
Hello. Nice to talk to you.
It's nice to talk to you, and on such a consequential topic. Thank you for taking the time. Before we get too deep into the news of the conversation, can you first explain what Wisconsin Books to Prisoners is and when y'all became an organization?
Sure. We're a really small collective of volunteers. There's generally over the years between 3 and 7 of us. We started in 2006 and began sending books nationwide. And within a year, we were just overwhelmed with letters and realized that we needed to be a sustainable project. We had to limit it in some way. And that's when we decided just to limit it to Wisconsin prisoners. And we shipped books for 2 years. And then in 2008, we were banned by the DOC. We had to resort to getting the help of the ACLU to overcome that ban.
And why were you banned back in 2008?
I think because we were just suspicious people. They didn't know who we were. The situation was very different at that time.
Well, is it because you were sending, like, you said that you had so many letters in, like you were sending a significant amount of books out, and so you were probably flagged, like, who is this organization?
Right, exactly. And the ban was overturned, and we continued to send books for years. And in 2018, we were banned again out of the blue. By that time, we had sent 65,000 books. And I called the DOC, spoke to an assistant security director who I had the impression he did not know about our project or did not realize the volume of books that we had sent in the last decade. And he quickly overturned the ban and made it very clear in a memo to DOC staff and to us that we were an approved vendor and could send used books so long as they were clean copies, meaning free of highlighting, underlining marks, no imprints. So we continued to send books, and then in the beginning of January, we were banned again, restricted from sending used books. And we responded with a proposal that was based on research we did, for example, about how other groups, book-to-prisoner groups in the country, had overcome bans that were similar in their states, and also based on our track record. And by this point, we had sent well over 65,000, maybe 70,000 books to prisoners without any instant of contraband.
Yeah, and you're talking about now there's been this major policy change at the state level at the beginning of this year to ban these used books once again.
Right.
You're facing that. What was your reaction to this ban coming back? Because the basically my understanding is that they're saying that used books are being used to like smuggle in drugs, like contraband and that sort of thing.
Right.
And you're saying y'all have never had any sort of issue with that happening before. Like none of your books have been flagged as coming in as any kind of like soiled or compromised books before, correct?
Correct. And when we did receive the email from Sarah Cooper, who's the secretary of the Division of Adult Institutions, she made it clear in that email that it wasn't our group that they distrusted. It was groups who would impersonate us and then serve as a vehicle to get contraband into the prison. So this was offered all without evidence. And later on, when the press responded, or the press got curious about this whole issue, then we found out indirectly about their claims that back in February, books had come in to Oshkosh, a prison there, and been flagged for contraband. And we still are not clear on whether it was someone impersonating our project or what the situation was. In theory, we should have been notified at that time. So there was some kind of gaffe because we continued to send books for months after that. So that's where things kind of stand now.
I actually volunteered back around 2011 with LGBTQ Books for Prisoners. It was kind of a dual program that was working in the same space and in partnership at a room of one's own with you all. And I remember the meticulous process that we went through for how books were handled, selected, and sent. And just because, like, I'm sure plenty of people listening, they haven't had this sort of in-person experience where they see you have a bunch of letters that come in. So people are writing you from our prisons, like all across the state, and basically requesting books of their interests, things that they're interested in that they might not be able to get their hands on. And so can you walk us through kind of that process of how your books are selected, like what you're sending, that sort of thing?
Yeah, we solicit books from the community. We also, in more recent years, as our track record is out there and we're better known, publishers and authors occasionally offer us books for free, which we appreciate. Prisoners write directly to us. We encourage them to ask for books by subject matter or genre, and we pick 3 books out of our library of donated books or gifted books, use and send them to the prisoner.
You're facing this change, and obviously it's going to have a massive impact on what you do because that is the bread and butter of your project is sending used books. It's a economically accessible model, and now this has a major strain on that. I understand there's been movement on the issue. You met with the state DOC recently, right, about this change. What kind of communication have you had with Wisconsin's prisons and in the system? And is there anything from the recent meeting that you can tell us about?
Not much, except that they were very actually complimentary about what we've done and seem to have appreciated our work and are genuinely interested in getting more books to prisoners. But their overwhelming concern is the whole drug issue of whatever is serving as vehicles to get contraband in. So I feel it's kind of, remember that thing during COVID? Due to an overabundance of caution, that was kind of their response. It's not clear whether they'll dial it back until they figured out what's really going on. But we haven't been entirely banned. That was the, good part. We still, and my understanding is that any brick and mortar vendor of books out there can still send new books to prisoners in Wisconsin so long as there's a receipt included that indicates, the basic information.
Think scaling AI is hard? Think again. With Watson X, you can deploy AI across any environment. Above the clouds, helping pilots navigate flights, and on lots of clouds, helping employees automate tasks. On-prem, so designers can access proprietary data, and on the edge, so remote bank tellers can assist customers. Watson X works anywhere, so you can scale AI everywhere. Learn more at ibm.com/WatsonX. IBM. Let's create.
Dear Toyota, I need a word with you about your Crown family. Suddenly, I love traffic. Rush hour is my happy place. In the comfort of my Crown, I feel on top of the world. This is strange though, right?
The captivating Toyota Crown family. Toyota, let's go places.
As you said, there's been a number of fantastic write-ups on this, from Wisconsin Watch, Wisconsin Prisoners Restricting Books, and from Tone Madison. WPR did a piece. We'll put some of those in our show notes. But it did see, in messaging from the Sarah Cooper, the Division of Adult Institutions Administrator, just about that it's not exactly accurate to say that there's an all-out book ban because you can still send new books. I am curious, though, for an organization like yours that is really volunteer-based, like how reasonable is that? I can't imagine that you're flush with like new book kind of money. Of course.
Right. No. And they certainly, the DOC certainly understands how difficult it is to raise money for projects like ours. They don't doubt that. But what's really tragic is that we are the only source of free books. So a prisoner, for example, like currently now, and many of them only work, majority is my understanding, make 12 cents an hour. They have to work, if you do the math, hours and hours and hours to pay for the cost of a book, much less work 6 hours to pay for the first class stamp to request a book. So that's what's tragic, is that it seems to really be censoring reading and censoring the reading of the most impoverished people in prison.
Yeah. And you guys have been around for a minute, and so word is out that people can write you. Are you still getting book requests from inmates?
We're still getting a huge volume of requests, and that's what concerns us, because it suggests that the DOC hasn't really informed their prisoners what they reference as people in our care. That's what's been going on. So that was one of the things we did ask them to do, because it seemed unfair that prisoners who are having to work, again, 6 hours to buy a stamp aren't going to have their requests fulfilled. Not very soon, anyway, because, again, as you pointed out, it's really going to limit. We're going to still attempt to send new books, but it's really going to, as limited as our program, really, really significantly.
I just remember reading the letters from folks, from inmates when I was volunteering, and them just really being extremely moving to me, and just the opportunity to provide that sort of resource felt extremely powerful. Can you talk about, the power of the work that y'all are doing and how this used book ban might impact prisoners a little bit more?
Yeah. Well, the project was started largely because, and I could confirm that because at the time I had been volunteering for several years at a prison here in Dane County, Oak Hill Correctional Institute, to show documentary films once a week. And it was there, of course, that I learned that there were, from the prisoner's point of view, that prison libraries were really, really antiquated. The hours that they could go in were very limited. When there was little money, it was libraries that were closed, and that was often the case throughout the years. So there were all of this concern. They were able to read books of interest to them. So that was one thing that motivated the project. And I think that's still an issue of books being antiquated. On top of that, speaking of antiquated books, people may or may not know that they've been rolling out tablets. And nationwide, that tends to be a trend, and it's very controversial because there are very few books on there. Right now, my understanding is, and we're in the middle of trying to verify this, but And the source of free books on the tablets is from the Gutenberg Library. And it's a very limited number. And these are books all that are where the copyright date has expired. So the majority of them are 100 years old. And we had a prisoner write to us recently to explain. He had actually counted how many books there were. And he said something, it was something in the 349, something like this. And he said, well, if you're interested in 18th, 19th century literature, you might be satisfied. But if you want anything current, there is nothing available. And he admitted that he enjoyed, reading, literature from previous centuries, but he had read every book that interested him on that list. So that's the limitations there. And what I've read is that the prisoners now, this information is just coming out, prisoners are charged by the cent to read.
They're being charged to read.
Yeah, in some cases. And it's not clear. This isn't clear. This is information that we really are requesting. We're very curious about it. But the point being is that if you want to buy something on these tablets and you're indigent, it's just going to be impossible. You're going to be limited to these selections that have been made for you from the Gutenberg Library.
And the use of tablets, man, it just makes me think about at least, the criticisms of our prison system in general in the U.S. is money that's being made on them in terms of the economics of mass incarceration, where, there are tons of instances of private companies profiting from mass incarceration.
Absolutely. The DOC makes... Right now, there's a class action suit that was started by a prisoner at Boscobel. And this is because when tablets were, and I think they were sold, I'm not clear on that, but when tablets were offered to prisoners years ago, they were promised by the DOC that everything that they purchased, all the digital files, music, games, books, would be theirs to own forever. Now they've moved to a new tablet company because of higher revenue is what I understand. And prisoners who had tablets previously cannot transfer their libraries onto the new tablets. So in effect, prisons who have invested money in trying to build their personal libraries on their previous tablets, it's now gone. Thousands. It represents thousands of dollars, you can imagine.
And after you said just, if someone's making 12 cents an hour and they bought, a book with their money, I'm just thinking about solutions here. Is there anything that can be done at this point to push back, or have the powers that be drawn kind of a hard line in the sand on this policy? Is your group considering any legal actions? Is there recourse here?
Yeah, we've looked into that, and it's possible that our First Amendment rights as distributors are being violated. It's possible that the 14th Amendment rights of prisoners are being violated in terms of discrimination. But other than that, we haven't given it much thought yet about where to go with this. We were hopeful. We really did want to have not have an adversarial relationship with the DOC. We were really hopeful that when we made our proposal that they would accept it. We were actually really shocked they didn't.
And was your proposal to kind of make your organization an exception, kind of a protected sender?
We didn't want to do that, but that was one of the things that had worked. There's problems with the approved vendor. It begins to be offer an opportunity for the Department of Corrections in various states to control who is okay and who isn't. And even currently, as far as I know, the Wisconsin DOC administrative codes say we require books to come from a commercial vendor, which of course is what we've been doing all along since we're, an affiliate, a project of A Room of One's Own Bookstore in Madison. I would say the majority of letters that we get from prisoners in terms of nonfiction requests, which are really significant, are books on trades and books on how to start a business or nonprofit. And indirectly, that suggests, unfortunately, that the prisons aren't doing enough to help prisoners who are really trying to prepare to reenter their communities as productive members. They're being thwarted by the lack of resources. And that's tragic, really.
That goal of rehabilitation isn't really taking hold, and it doesn't help.
Right. I'm not saying the DOC isn't doing anything, but they're clearly not doing enough based on our, the data, you could say, that we're collecting by virtue of trying to account for these requests.
And, I know how I'm feeling listening as a part of this conversation. I'm sure folks listening might be thinking, how can I help? How can I help? Like, are there any resources that you would recommend in terms of if people want to understand this issue more, or any other paths to help you guys in just what is an incredibly wonderful mission?
I think appeals could be made to the governor. Appeals could be made to their representatives. And I think the appeal should be made to the DOC to encourage them to provide justifications, because I don't dispute the fact that drugs can be, paper can be tainted with drugs and it can get into prisons. But even the DOC was willing to admit that during COVID, when everything was locked down, that this is my understanding. They had the impression that things would be all right. But no, actually, drugs were still getting in, which was the case. Similar situation was when they went from allowing prisoners to receive personal mail to rerouting that so they could only get a copy of the letter, not the original letter, as an effort to stymie the flow of drugs. Many states who did this, and it's not clear whether this was true in Wisconsin, but drugs actually increased after they adopted those programs. But see, it's the data. Where is the data? When we were banned in 2008, we asked for the data about, in the whole history of the DOC, for every instance where contraband had come in via a book. And they did not respond to that question, which suggests there was no evidence, or they had never bothered to collect the data. So is this the situation we're in today? I don't know. I know that the ACLU has filed open records requests for that information. And they should be transparent about this.
And there's also pathways to help a room of one's own, and your guys' is kind of immediate. There's the bigger problem, and then also helping y'all with, like, if someone wants to be like, I want to donate, not donate a book, but kind of donate a new book or something like that. And do you guys have a way for that as well?
Yeah, thank you very much for bringing that up. Yeah, we have a website where people can donate, of course, funds to help us with postage. That's always been our biggest expense. But of course, now we certainly would appreciate funds to buy new books. And A Room of One's Own maintains a wish list of books that are frequently requested by prisoners that we, really appreciate people making contributions towards.
Well, Cami, it's such an honor to have you on the podcast, and thank you for bringing light to this serious issue that your organization is facing, and thank you for all the work that you do for our community and Wisconsin prisoners.
Oh, sure. Thank you very much for drawing attention to this whole issue.
That's Cami Mathey, Wisconsin Books to Prisoners director and co-founder. If you want to help the group out or are interested in volunteering in some way, head to our show notes for a link to their website. That's all for today, here on CityCast Madison. I'm Bianca Martin. If you enjoyed the show, why not share this episode with someone you know who loves books and access to information. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more stories from around the city. Until then, take good care.